Hello class, and welcome to video 9, habit 3, part 1, put first things first. So what does that really mean? Well, I'd like to start with a cartoon. It's about a guy who shows a cartoon before giving a boring presentation. Sound familiar? But it doesn't work because the cartoon has no punchline. Sorry guys. So Homer might say, first, put first things first, drink beer. Okay, well, not necessarily going to agree with that, but we are going to talk about what this habit means. So Covey starts out by saying that you can classify all activities according to two dimensions. Importance, how important it is to you. Now this deals with habit 2, your mission, roles, and goals in life. So this is what's important to you, not necessarily to your boss or someone else. And the second dimension is urgency, something that's pressing, but not necessarily related to mission, roles, and goals, although it may be. So things can be important or not important, urgent or not urgent. Okay? So if you use those two dimensions, you end up with 4 possibilities that Covey places in 4 different quadrants. He calls the first one quadrant 1. These are items that are both urgent and important to you. Quadrant 2, items that are not urgent but are still important. They're just not urgent yet. Quadrant 3, items that are urgent but not really important to you. And quadrant 4, items that are neither urgent nor important to you. So let's talk about these. First, quadrant 1, items that are urgent and important. That would be crises. I come home from work, my wife is packing her bags, loading them into the car, and saying, I'm leaving you right now. Well, that's important because I love my wife, and secondly, it's urgent. I can't say, well, I'll talk to you after I eat dinner and watch the news. No, I have to deal with it right then. Pressing problems like, how am I going to pay this dental bill? How am I going to do other financial things and so forth? And deadline-driven projects, things that have to be done by a certain time. I've got to get this report ready by the end of next week. And important meetings that are urgent and important. An interview for a new job, for example. Quadrant 2 are items that are important but not necessarily urgent, like building relationships. So you know that there's a new coworker that's just been hired, and you really ought to get to know and build a relationship, but it's not really urgent. You don't have to do it right now. So the tendency is to put these things off. Second, recognizing new opportunities. This is important, but again, you can put those off. There's no deadline. Planning, that's important, but again, you can put that off. Recreation, that's why I put the golfer here. It's important to have recreation in our life so that we're well balanced, but if you don't take time off from work, nobody's going to throw you in jail. And other prevention or PC activities. I know I need to get the oil changed on my car, but I can let it slide for another 100 miles. Quadrant 3, items that are urgent but not important. Interruptions. You're in your office working and someone comes in to see you and it's really trivial, or they just want to chat. Some phone calls, like the person who calls me on the phone trying to sell me aluminum siding for my home, and I live in a brick home. And if I buy it now, I get a lower price. Well, that has a sense of urgency, but it's not important to me. Some mail, it says answer now, and it may not really be that important to you. Some reports that we have to do that have a deadline, but they aren't really important. Nobody pays attention to them. And many of the meetings that we go to in life. Those are urgent and important, but not important, excuse me. And so here's an example. Boss says, Wally, did you finish the analysis for tomorrow? Wally says, no. I'm waiting until the last minute so you won't have time to ask for unnecessary changes. the boss walks away thinking, I'm a step ahead of him. The analysis itself is unnecessary. It's urgent tomorrow, but it's really not important. Quadrant 4, items that are not urgent and also not important. A lot of trivia that we deal with, busy work that we often have to do, a lot of junk mail. I don't know about you, I take it out of my mailbox and I take it directly to the garbage can. Some phone calls, like that aluminum siding salesperson who calls me. Most TV watching, but not all of it. But sometimes we just start watching and we end up, you know, I have my favorite TV show, and after I get through watching it, that recliner just won't let me up. So it seems. Other pleasant time wasters. That's why I put cards, you know, playing cards. We can spend all our time doing things that are not urgent and they're not important. So I want you to think in your mind of one activity, if you did superbly well and consistently, would have marvelous results for you. Just think of it. One activity which, if you did superbly well and consistently, would have marvelous results for you. I'm going to tell you which quadrant that is in, those 4 quadrants we just mentioned. It's in quadrant 2. It's important but not urgent, because I said if you did it superbly well and consistently would have marvelous results. That means it's important, but the fact that you're not doing it means it's not urgent. Well, the reason I did that was to point out to you that quadrant 2 is the key quadrant that we need to be concerned about. It's not magic. That's just the way things are. So let's see what happens if we spend all of our time in quadrant 1 dealing with items that are urgent and important. You get burned out. You're dealing with stress. You are in a crisis management mode because everything is crisis management. You're always putting out fires. Not a pleasant place to be, and you can't stay there very long. What about if you're in quadrant 2, doing things that are important but not urgent? You develop vision, perspective, balance in your life, discipline because you're doing them before they become urgent. You're in control of your life, and you have fewer crises because you took care of them before they became urgent. So I started out by talking about if I came home and my wife is packing the car about ready to leave me, well, if I take care of that relationship on a daily basis, even though it may not be urgent at the time, then it will never become urgent, and it remains important, and it won't be a crisis, and she won't be leaving me. And so you end up with less activities in quadrant 1, urgent and important. What happens if you spend all your time in quadrant 3 dealing with things that are urgent but not important? Here you'll have a short-term focus. Everything needs your attention now. You're still in the crisis management mode. You don't have time for planning. You're not in control. And you have shallow and broken relationships. For example, let's say that you're dealing with a teenage son. It could be a daughter. I'll just pick on a son. And you've been having issues with him, and you finally are talking, and you're finally communicating and beginning to get through to each other, and the telephone rings. And you go over and answer the phone, and it's that pesky aluminum siding salesman again. And you try to get off the phone as quickly as you can, tell him you're not interested. When you finally hang up the phone, you turn back to your son and find out he's gone. Because the message you've given to him is that phone call is more important than him. What happens if you spend all your time in quadrant 4, things that are not important and not urgent? You become totally irresponsible. You get fired from jobs. You become dependent on others or institutions for basics, like the jail, the government. Let me tell you about a story about a woman named Loretta. I won't tell you any more about her, but her husband was a member of our church, although she wasn't, but we tried to be concerned with her. And one day, 2 of the women from the church went over to visit Loretta. And she was living in this home that they rented. And when they walked in, they couldn't believe it. It's kind of like that hoarder show. I mean, there were trash bags laying around that hadn't been emptied, sink full of dirty dishes and dishes all over the counters and the table, laundry that hadn't been put away and sorted, dirty clothes, clean clothes, you name it. In other words, the house was a giant mess. And they said, Loretta, things aren't good here. And she says, I know, I just really can't keep up with it. And they said, well, would you mind if we got some people from our church and came over and did like a little service project and helps you get caught up on things? She said, that would be wonderful. So the following Saturday, they put together a work party, and people came over and they bought their pickup trucks and trash bags, and they cleaned the place out and threw all the trash away and washed all the dishes and put them away, finished the laundry and put it away, did the vacuuming, got everything spit spot. It was great. They felt good about their service. About 3 or 4 weeks later, these same ladies came back to see how Loretta's doing. They walked into the house and it's like they'd never been there. It was a total mess again. And I said, Loretta, I can't understand this. We got you called up. What's going on? She said, I just don't have time. They said, what do you mean? She says, well, I kind of stay up late, so I wake up and it's, like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I quickly eat breakfast, but I don't have time to wash the dishes because it's time for The Price is Right and my other shows. And so I watch those, and then it's lunchtime, so I go eat lunch, and again, before I can do the dishes, it's time for my soap, so I got to see what's going on there. So I'll watch those, and then it's dinner time, and I eat dinner, and then I watch the news, and then it's prime time, and I watch that, and before you know it, it's time for the Tonight Show, and I stay up late and watch that, and then it's time for bed. She was spending all her time watching television, addicted to it, I guess, and could not take care of her house. In fact, she was renting a house from her mother, who evicted her. Eventually, she got a divorce, and then she had to take care of herself. And I'm glad to report she did turn her life around, got a job, and learned how to take care of her own home. But for a long time, she was dependent on others for just existence. That's quadrant 4. So what's the strategy? Steal time from quadrants 3 and 4 and invest it in quadrant 2. So let me give you an example of that. I remember one time the provost of the college wanted us to revise the curriculum, so the provost at the time was a male, and he called us all together for meetings on Friday afternoons beginning at 3 o'clock from 3 to 5, and nobody wanted to be there. And the curriculum revision was mainly in the area of general education, which isn't my area, but I had to be at the meeting. It was urgent, but not important to me. So I sat in the back of the room, and I didn't want to waste time, so I found myself grading papers, reading an article, writing letters to my children, doing other things to stay busy. Whenever something would come up I was interested in or it was important to me, I would maybe participate, and then I would tune it right back out. I was beginning to feel guilty till I looked around the room because I was sitting in the back, and I saw about 2/3 of the faculty were all doing the same thing I was doing. We were stealing time from quadrant 3 in this case and invested in quadrant 2, doing things that were important for us. So let's view a video by Covey called Big Rocks, where he deals with the strategy of what we should do.
Elizabeth, you've got, you hold this. Very, very busy life, right?
I do.
You have a work life?
I do.
Family life as well?
Mm-hmm.
Children?
Not yet.
Not yet. What's the nature of your work assignment?
Consulting.
Consulting? Do you have a part of a firm, a consulting firm?
Yes, I do. I direct an international firm.
An international firm? Mm-hmm. So you really are interfacing with all kinds of people in the firm and outside the firm.
That's right.
Do you also do direct work with the clients yourself?
That's right.
And you have a number of associates you work with
Mm-hmm.
all around this country and throughout the world?
Mm-hmm.
Starting?
Yes.
Kind of like us.
That's right.
You want a rich personal life and a rich family life and also community and so forth. Do you ever feel like you get bogged down in the thick of thin things?
Yes.
Do you ever feel like your life is kind of out of balance, out of whack?
It can be.
Do you ever feel like you're in the pounding surf?
Mm-hmm.
You know, where you just have one big wave after another knock you down, you stagger back, and then here comes another wave, then another one knocks you down to where it just kind of beats you up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that might be analogous to all these little, small things that tend to fill our life. And that just little by little, they just accumulate. Now, your job, you can't go above this, is to get all those large rocks in the jar. Good luck. I'll describe each rocks as she puts them in. What's that one called?
Q2, planning, preparation.
Right. Planning, preparation, prevention, and empowerment. Q2. That which is not urgent but important.
Right. Am I picking these up in any order?
Any way you want. You want to get them all in there because they're all important.
Can I move the little rocks?
Well, you have the little rocks as they are now, but you can't go above this.
Okay. Can I put this down?
Sure. Okay, the next rock she's putting in there is called relationships and family. She's trying to make it so she can get them all in there on the assumption that by moving the other ones around, it makes more space. You didn't look at that third rock you put in there. That's employment, some key employment issue, and then you put major projects here. And I can't get it above there.
I haven't worked it yet.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
It's not going to work.
That's called service, community, church. Do you ever feel like this?
Yes.
How many feel like this?
Am I still going?
Yeah, you can. Try to get them in there. You're a hands-on person.
I am. Well. That's not very flat.
She just put down the sharpen the saw. How many frequently do that? I just don't have time today to sharpen the saw. You ever been too busy driving to take time to get gas?
This was important.
Vacation. Vacation's important to her. By moving the little things around, you might squeeze in one more of those big major things. It's almost. Wow, it's good. You know, if it doesn't fit, force it.
Do I have to really put all of these in one?
Well, no. You can neglect a big opportunity if you want.
No.
Here's something that's called urgent and important. It's a quadrant 1 thing that is blindsiding you, that it's your biggest client, that if you don't get back to that client now, you've given up your vacation. And you have no special block of time just for yourself. You have no young children. I'll tell you what you can do if you want to. you can take a whole different approach. You have a totally fresh goal. You can work out of a different paradigm altogether. You can do anything you want.
So I can use that bucket. That's what you're saying.
Anything, yeah.
Well, then I'd rather put these in the bottom. And then pour the little pebbles on top. Vacation.
Okay, she has sharpening the saw, planning, preparation,
Spouse.
spouse,
Vacation.
employment,
Big opportunity.
big opportunity,
Important and urgent. Block of time. Community. Church. Those young children keep looking at me. Glad my husband's not here. No, I don't leave them there.
okay?
Gotta work.
You got all the important things in first, right?
That's right.
That's great. Okay. What did you learn?
I learn if I have an opportunity to do all the things that are important first and block out when I have the fullest amount available, and then all the little things will fill in the important things.
Even if this were higher with the green rocks, you may neglect some of those, see? But so what?
Those are just fillers.
Fillers, and they're not important. These things you've decided are the most important things. Did you also notice anything else about each of these things? Common characteristic of each of the big rocks. What have they to do with, or who?
With myself.
Self,
Some had to do with others. They all
others,
affect different
all
people.
had to do with relationships and different roles that you've got. So what if you were to shift to a paradigm of deciding, first of all, what your whole life is about, so that you have a philosophical basis on which to make all of the decisions about what are the big rocks, middle-sized, small rocks, and so forth. Put the big rocks in very first, the most important things, then the other ones accordingly. And to get out of daily planning altogether, because if you're in the daily planning, what's already happened?
The little rocks already filling up my day.
Absolutely. And all you're doing now is prioritizing crises. And you have a big rock like this, like a major project, just like you tried to do. There's just no way you can fit that in. So what if you had the philosophy of relationships rather than schedules, and to organize your whole life around relationships?
Okay, so there you see it. She put what was important first, put first things first, and then let everything else come afterwards. So the most important thing, again, we said, is quadrant 2. So there are 4 key activities associated with quadrant 2. The first is identifying the roles that we have in life. Second, the goals. So Covey says to use his system, you should to decide on the results you want in the next 7 days, the goals for each role that you've identified in number 1. 3, scheduling time for the goals when you're actually going to do them within the week. And then 4, daily adapting. We don't want to be a slave to the system. We may have to adapt as things come up. So in Blackboard, in this module, I have provided for you in Module 3 a homework form you'll find for this Homework 5, which isn't due until Module 4, but I wanted to give it to you now. I think it may even be due a little bit later. Let me. Yeah, this slide is wrong. It's not due till Module 5. Okay, so it's called Homework 5, Module 5. So this is the form. Now I'll show you how to use this and what I expect you to do, and then I'd like for you to go ahead and do it, and then you'll hand it in Module 5. So the first thing you do is over on the left column, it says roles. So you decide on the roles you have in life. So for example, I'll fill it out as if it were me. I'm a husband, I'm a professor, and I'm a father. Okay? So those are key roles that I have. Within each of those roles, I have goals that I might set. I like to do the dishes for my wife, not every day, but sometime to relieve her of that duty. I'd like to help her with the laundry maybe, and take her on a date. As a professor, I've always got grading of homework and assignments to do. I need to prepare my lectures, so that's some of the goals I have for a professor for the next week. And as a father, I don't have any children at home now, but I've got grandkids that I like to go visit and spend time with, and buy birthday gifts for all my children and grandchildren. So that's something that I need to consider doing. So those are the goals I have for the different roles that I have. Now I have to decide which day of the week I'm going to do each of those goals. So I figured, well, I don't have to work on Sunday. I can come home from church and I'll do the dishes for my wife on Sunday. The laundry, I'm going to do that Saturday because I don't work on that day either. And take her on the date, I'll do that Friday night because it's been a long week and we need time together. Okay, as far as grading, let's see, I'll do that on Thursday. It's near the end of the week. I can get everything kind of done for the week. And preparing lectures, I'm going to do that on Monday, so I'm prepared for the entire week. What about visiting the grandkids? I'm going to do that on Sunday after I've done the dishes in the afternoon when everybody's home. And when am I going to buy those birthday gifts? I'm going to do that on Tuesday. So now I've got the day of the week I'm going to do those activities. The next step is to decide what time of that I'm going to do each activity. So do the dishes. I'm going to do those at 2 o'clock after lunch. And we're home from church and so forth. And the grandkids, we're going to go visit them at 4 o'clock and then come home by 6 o'clock for dinner. When am I going to prepare the lectures? I'm going to do that at 2 o'clock because most of my classes are in the morning, and then I'm free to do that. Buy the birthday gifts, again, it'll be in the afternoon after I finished work, let's say 3 o'clock. When am I going to do the grading? I'm going to do that too when I finish my classes. When am I going to take my wife on a date? Well, we'll make that 7 p.m. And when I'll do the laundry, I'm going to do it in the morning, get it out of the way kind of, so I have the rest of the day free at 9 a.m. So now I've scheduled my goals for my different roles for this week. Of course, I may have to be flexible, as I said, but that's the way you use the form. So again, this will be available to you in Blackboard. It's not due till Module 5, so it's a mistake on this slide, but it'll be due Module 5. Okay? Now, why is this time management system better than other systems? Well, first, it's principle-centered, and it's conscience-directed, and it defines your unique mission, values, and long-term goals. It helps you to better balance your life and gives you greater context through weekly organizing. So you take care of what's important to you on a weekly basis. So you might consider, to be more effective and get things done, to delegate. If you can delegate to somebody else, you're developing your production capability, PC, while still getting the job done, or P. But I'm not talking about gopher delegation, go for this, go for that, meaningless stuff, but rather what I call stewardship delegation, where you put somebody in charge of something, have them come back and report to you. So a friend of mine and I developed what we call a model of delegation. So to explain this, I'm going to use my family. This is the family when they were young, and and we had assigned them duties. For example, doing the dishes. My wife said, why should I have an automatic dishwasher? I have a husband and 7 children. So there you go. So each item in this model begins with the letter A. So let's begin. The first is to assess the situation. And then you can know whose turn it's going to be. So you can see in this picture, I'm holding my son. He's about 4 years old. And on Thanksgiving, it happened to be his turn to do the dishes that fell on Thanksgiving. And we had another family come over and visit us, and they had 6 children of their own. We had our 7. You can imagine the pile of dishes. I looked at my 4-year-old son and said, assessing the situation, there's no way you can do those. So I said to him, you know what? You're going to have a helper today. I'll help you to do the dishes. And I ended up doing them, and he helped to put them in the drain rack or dry them or something, okay? Because I just assessed that as too much. Second item is to make the assignment and make it clear. So I remember one time it was the oldest daughter here, Joy, that's over on the far right over there, her turn to do the dishes. And she was a young teenager, I think, at the time. And she was doing the dishes, and my wife and I were watching the news late at night. My wife went in to check on how it was going, and I heard yelling and screaming. So I went into the kitchen and said, what's going on? And my wife said she refuses to finish the dishes. I turned to Joy and I says, why didn't you finish? She said, I did. Look, there's no dirty dishes. They're all washed. They're either in the drain rack drying, or I've already dried them, put them away. They're all done. My wife said she refuses to clean off the kitchen counter and the dining room table and sweep the floor. My daughter said, you said do the dishes, not clean the kitchen. Okay, the assignment wasn't clear. What my wife meant by do the dishes was different than what my daughter understood. So we had to make that assignment clear. Later, when 2 of my sons were arguing in the kitchen, and I said, what's going on? And they were arguing about the dishes, and one of them said, he refuses to finish doing them. And my son said, the other son said, I had all the dishes done by 7 o'clock, and somebody came in here later and ate a couple of bowls of ice cream, and these 2 dirty bowls are tomorrow's dishes, not today's. Okay, so we had to assign a time after which they became the next day's dishes. Next is allocate the resources to do the dishes. So I remember it was my 3rd son here, Nathan. It was his turn to do the dishes, and when I got ready to go to bed, I went through the kitchen and I saw not one dish had been washed, not one. And I think I was reactive. I went down the hall and I was angry. And I threw open the door, and he was in bed asleep, and I turned on the light, and I went over and I shook him and wake him up. And he said, what's going on? I said, you didn't do the dishes. He says, but. I said, don't say but. You didn't do the dishes. You got to do them. It's your job. He said, I can. I said, don't say you can't. You can do it. So I kind of stood him up and kind of pushed him down the hall and got all the way to the kitchen, stood him in front of the sink, and I said, okay, now do the dishes. He said, I can't. I said, why do you keep saying that? He said, we're out of dishwashing detergent. Okay, no detergent. I felt about 2 inches high. So what I did is I said, go back to bed. And the next day I went and bought some detergent, and I came home and did the dishes myself. I felt bad. I didn't allocate to him the resources. The resources could be materials. It could be the time. It could be people. It could be money. In his case, it was materials. They weren't available. The next day is to allow them to do it their way. Don't micromanage. So again, let's go back to my daughter Joy. It was her turn to do the dishes, and she'd been in there about 20 minutes, and I decided to go in and check and see how things were going. I heard her rock and roll music coming from the kitchen, so I knew she was doing something in there. I came in to see, and not one dish had been washed, not one. I said, what are you doing, just dancing in here? You didn't do any dishes. She said, look, I've got it all organized. And I looked. She said, here is the rinse water, here's the soapy water, and here are the dishes. And she had the dishes all organized. All the glasses were together, all the silverware, all the plates were stacked up, and so forth. I said, okay, get started. So what she did, she took 1 glass, and she put it in the soapy water and washed it, put it in the rinse water, and put it in the drain rack, and went back for another. I said, this will take you forever. Let me show you how to do it. So I raked all the silverware into the sink and put the plates in, and then put the glasses on top of them. I said, now those will be soaking. You don't have to waste motion going back and forth for them. She said, now you ruined my whole system. I got to start all over. She started taking it back out. I wanted her to do the dishes my way. She wanted to do it her way, even if it wasn't efficient. So I had to allow her to do it her way. And the last is accountability. When my youngest son developed diabetes and had to prick his finger, we kind of let it slide, him doing the dishes. We never held him accountable, and guess what? He kind of skated out of it. So you have to hold people accountable for the job that's expected. So that's the A model. Assess the situation, make a clear assignment, allocate the resources, allow them to do it their way, and hold them accountable for it. But you can't be selfish. Most of us could benefit from major surgery in this area. We often make demands of another person due to our selfishness, although we may not be aware of it. We say, I'm going to delegate, so we ask someone to do a task because it'll be easier for us, without realizing that doing this task will have a disproportionately negative impact on the other person. So use delegation wisely. Okay, we're going to show you a movie at the end of this part of the presentation. It's called The Time of Your Life. I'm going to show you the 6 points they make in this video, and you can watch for them and they will summarize them at the end. The first is list your goals and set priorities. Second, make a daily to-do list. Third, start with A's, not with C's. 4, ask yourself often this question: what's the best use of my time right now? Number 5, handle each piece of paper only once. I would say piece of email maybe. And 6, do it now. Now this video is a little bit dated, but the principles are still good. You'll recognize some of the actors. James Whitmore is in it. And then, so we're going to stop this session. Then I want you to view the video, and then you'll have another part to view. So this is the end of part 1. Part 2 is the video, The Time of Your Life, and then you'll come back and view part 3 for the rest of Habit 3.